incest aversion is a natural thing because having offspring with your relatives has a higher chance of genetic defect happening and the offspring dying or having some kind of illness or disability, right? So through natural selection, which is a process where nature selects characteristics and behaviors that benefit the spreading of our genes, right? Meant that we developed an aversion to being with relatives in a romantic way, right? And he was saying that he thinks that's because the brain developed some kind of way of recognizing someone you've been brought up with as a child, someone you were very similar to and familiar with. That was so if there was an inkling that they were a relative, the brain would then switch in a different mode and be like, "There's no sexual desire there. They're just like a family member." And his argument, it was a small little subsection, a couple of lines. He was like, "This could be why people get friend zoned because the brain maybe starts to believe that they're more of a brotherly or sisterly figure in your life rather than a romantic partner, and then create that, the classic thing of just like, oh, I really love you, but not in that way." Do you know what I mean? And that way, meaning like the sexual desire way, is limited because of like the relationship you have with that person is too familiar, and now it's something the brain doesn't want because of this natural incest aversion that we have. I mean, I know I'm sort of saying that out of context in the first few minutes of the episode, but
make unfamiliar the relationship.
It's almost like if someone becomes like a brother or sister to you, you're not going to have that like romantic spark, are you?
That's why mystery is important.
Yeah.
So if there's anyone watching that's sort of in a friend zone sort of situation, you need to be more unfamiliar. That's why you use absence to increase respect.
I'd also just read the book. So I'm talking about, we haven't said because we literally just started recording and we were talking off air, but it's called The Ape That Discovered the Universe by Steve Stuart Williams. Brilliant book on evolutionary psychology. I'm about 120 pages into it. I've been reading over the past 3 or 4 days. Very interesting. But yeah, here we are, Jacob, back again.
Yeah.
I've got 1 or 2 points for today, mainly based on what I've been reading. But yeah, do you want me to take the floor or do you want to
go? If it's linked, you can go. Maybe you start and say your bit first because my bit's kind of a different sort of direction.
Okay. So again, today from me is probably going to be very evolutionary psychology themed because that's what I've been reading about and thinking about the past few days. But this one idea is something that after I read it sort of hasn't left my mind. And I want to sort of use you as a guinea pig, Jacob, and see, can I explain this well enough that you understand it? So it's this idea of an evolutionary mismatch, okay? Which, if I attempted to define it, is where a characteristic or behavior that we as humans developed due to natural selection thousands of years ago in our hunter-gatherer ancestral past is now maladaptive due to the way our world is now. Our genes and our biology operates based on mechanisms and systems that were useful when we were hunter-gatherers. But when those same characteristics and behaviors persist in today's world, in our behavior, in our mannerisms, and the things we do, it's actually not good for us. And that's why it's called a mismatch. Something that was good for us in our ancestral past, but is not good for us now because of the way our world is. So an example, the prime example is why we eat food that gives us diseases. You think about Eddie Abu's viral clips about how people just eat sugary shit that gives you diabetes and heart disease, and we know that it's bad for us. I do the same thing. I drink like fruit juices and I enjoy a KFC from time to time. I know that's bad for me, but I desire it, and at certain times I indulge those desires, right? Well, basically, it's an evolutionary mismatch because back in our hunter-gatherer ancestral past, if there was any food that was rich in calories, rich in sugar, rich in salt, rich in fat, we would eat as much of it as we possibly could because those food sources were so scarce in those times. So we have an inbuilt hunger drive mechanism that when we see fatty, saturated, salty, sweet foods, we try and eat as much as we possibly can. And it's an evolutionary mismatch because that behavior back then was positive, but today that's what leads to obesity and heart disease and high blood pressure and all of those physical problems that so many people suffer with. Another example of a evolutionary mismatch was ADHD in children. Okay, the author broke it down in saying children developed a natural drive to play, and play is one of the fundamental states in the developmental process that teaches you how to be a person in the world. So boys specifically are more inclined than girls. I mean, girls will also do this too, but boys are more inclined for what's called rough and tumble play, or what we call in our society is play fighting. Right? That's essential for a male, or anyone for that matter, to regulate their aggression, because they have an aggressive drive. But when you're play fighting as a kid, maybe you push the line a bit far, you get a bit hurt, you hurt someone else, it doesn't feel good. You learn where the line is. You learn how assertive you can be in a situation without hurting the other person. You learn how to control your aggression and turn it into something fun. A big example that is more on the feminine side, but also boys do this too, is like a sort of parental / care, bit of role play, right? Where young girls will look after like a doll. It's a classic example, right? Play is essential for us to develop as an individual in the world. And that was a great characteristic when we were educated through playing in the world, right? Through being a young boy and watching what your parents do and trying to be helpful and playing rough play with the other boys in the tribe, or girls watching what their mother's done and caring for animals or younger siblings or whatever, right? Now, those characteristics and that drive for play were useful back then. But today, the way we're educated is you sit in a chair at a desk, you shut up and you listen, right? There's an evolutionary mismatch there. And this drive for play that can't be satisfied through having to sit in a chair at a desk and shut up and listen to a teacher is arguably why we see symptoms like ADHD. That is hugely prevalent in young boys. And what the guy argued in the book was, when we see, he spoke about it in the context of young males, see young males being disruptive in class, wanting to play all the time. And we view that as their brain is wonky. They should be given drugs to help their concentration. And he said, well, no, they're just following their natural drive. And that's not their brain being wonky. That's the weird way that we educate people in comparison to the way our biology is supposed to be. So there's other examples, but it's this idea that a lot of what we do in today's world, and also a lot of things that go wrong with our behavior, are because of patterns of thinking and psychological and physiological drives that developed as a result of natural selection and our ancestral past. And it's been a bit of a truth bomb to hit me, but yeah, what are your thoughts? Ask any questions.
So we're trying to kind of suppress those drives now. Like, so from the food bit, so it was a scarcity, now it's an abundance. I mean, I'd rather be in abundance, to be honest. It's probably the better place to be. But there's no kind of, it doesn't have its value anymore, food, does it? It's you don't go and hunt it.
No, I mean, this is one thing that's said in the book, is more people globally die today from eating too much food than eating too little food.
That's ridiculous.
It's a scary idea though, isn't it? And that's why it shows there's something really going on here. There's some significance to what we're talking about.
Interesting how food can be addictive as well.
Yes.
People like can't stop eating.
It's like any substance or any substance or experience that makes you feel good and sort of numbs your emotions and satisfies you sort of neurochemically can get addictive, mate. I was addicted to Pokemon on the DS when I was 8 years old. Do you know what I mean? It could be anything. Right now, I'm addicted to exercise, probably. If you looked at how much I train in the lead up to Euros anyway, you know, like.
So there's like good addictions and bad addictions in there.
Yeah. I mean, I did a whole video on that kind of idea, but.
So also the fighting point. So that explains why, like, when my flatmate just comes up to me and starts punching me, everyone else kind of like, there's always that one friend in the friend group who just sort of comes up to you and then starts punching you. But
like, I understand it more in like toddlers and young kids, because that's when play is most important. In an 18, 19-year-old, it's perhaps a different story, but
So and that's bad because it's being suppressed now.
it's not necessarily bad that it's being suppressed. It's more just the point I think the author was trying to make was it's not necessarily true to view things like ADHD as a child with a wonky brain that should be cured with a medication. He said, imagine if you took a young male chimpanzee and told them to sit in a chair at a desk, don't say or do anything, and listen to a teacher about things they're not interested in.
Yeah.
He was basically saying the fact that so few children enjoy school is something we shouldn't just take as a given. Like, that's not good, surely, because it's not like kids don't want to learn; they love learning. But it's the way that it's done isn't really in alignment with the way we're wired psychologically. Very interesting. I'm not an expert though. This is me basically just waffling based on what I've been reading the past couple of days. What I suggest is people read the book because it's pretty good. I mean, I'm not, I sound like I'm really on the bandwagon of what this guy's saying, but that's just because I've just read it. I might reflect on it in a couple of weeks and sort of see what I'm actually taking from the book long term. But yeah.
Combine that with a bad attention span as well. Like those kids, what can they do?
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this week as well because I went to Cornwall with my granddad for a couple of days and lived a very low stimulation life for like 3 days. Didn't have Wi-Fi. On the second day, it was raining, so we just stayed in the chalet and I just had a lot of time to think and read and listen to podcasts and stare at walls and stuff. And my attention span felt like a big sigh of relief from being away from the overstimulation and deleting Instagram and all that bollocks. And it made me just reflect on, God, your attention is everything. It's the foundation of everything you have in terms of your mental health and the way that you can work and the way that you think and interact with people. And as time goes on, the more you can have a clear mind and think and speak and experience life with that kind of peace and clarity, the more rare you'll be and more valuable you'll be as a person, I think.
Yeah, I've got a couple more points in school as well. So this is something that Nisha said. So there's one of the best chapters of his book was called "Of the Scholars," and one of the best lines was like him basically saying scholars were like spectators watching all these people like take action, and that's what we should be doing, taking action. You can't get so you can only get so far being a spectator. I think the best, because it's just input, it's no output, and the best learning is output.
Yeah, you know what, Jake? I think you're picking up on something quite profound there. Keep going if you've got more. But then
okay. They sit in the cool shades. They want to be mere spectators. They take care not to sit where the sun burns upon the steps. Like those who stand in the street and stare at the people passing by, so they too wait and stare at thoughts others have thought.
Mm.
There's this thing from Aldous Huxley in Brave New World where he basically, I think I might have mentioned it before, but when books are sort of like when books are given to toddlers in Brave New World, the kids are given an electric shock. So every time that child grows up, they associate books with pain. And in our society, we associate books with boring because that's our version of the electric shock. And that's also done the same in Brave New World for flowers. So flowers and nature is kind of painful. So that's kind of the push away from all these resources that people don't want us to have.
Yeah, that scholars or spectators point is really quite nice, that you can focus on, like you say, input without output. You focus so much on taking in the information, but do you actually apply it? And if you don't apply it, what's the point? Like, is information really useful just jumbled about in your head. And I was actually thinking the other day, how much have I learned about life in terms of just being a person that wakes up in the morning, does the things he needs to do, has to deal with emotions and thoughts and relationships and all of that, the actual life stuff, not the biology, chemistry and physics or theoretical maths or whatever, like the real life mundane reality of being a human. How much have I learned about navigating that from school and from just doing life? I genuinely think I've learned more about mental health from taking cold showers than my psychology A level. Because everything in my psychology A level, I sort of knew already about, exercise is good and don't think negatively and all that kind of stuff. But like having a cold shower, I realize I've had a cold shower in the morning for like 4.5 years now, pretty much every day. And that teaches you more about what makes you happy than any theory, because it's like an action. So that's really nice. And then, your other point about Brave New World and being conditioned to find books painful and the way that we're conditioned to find books boring, I think is true. It's like something we've talked in other episodes about how our lives are just an amalgamation of narratives that we believe. And one narrative a lot of people believe is that reading books and learning is boring, because that's just what your friends think and what you assume. But when you do something like I have done the first 4 days and read a book that makes you really reevaluate the way you think about some parts of life, that's exciting. New knowledge opening up, like the web of ideas in my brain expanding.
Happiness runs after me. That is because I do not run after women. Happiness, however, is a woman. So this was from Nietzsche, that's a quote. And the way I interpret that is, don't chase happiness, attract it. So you don't wake up and think, I'm going to be happy today. Rather, you work towards things that attract it, like the gym and stuff. So if we take that.
Hold on. Rewind again. Say that bit about, say the line about you don't chase it, you attract it. Just repeat that and let me just listen to it again.
Happiness runs after me. That is because I do not run after women. Happiness, however, is a woman.
So he's linking to how the adage of like, don't chase women, make them chase after you and all that sort of cliche self-helpy bollocks. And he's linking that to don't chase happiness, attract it, make and then I like this. And you're saying do the things and be the person that would attract happiness in their life.
Become the person.
And that isn't that more aligned with how it actually feels to be happy? Because to me, like you say, you don't wake up necessarily happy. You don't wake up thinking, how am I going to look for happiness today? Happiness comes when I'm walking home from the gym. It comes from when I've finished reading and I've been thinking about something cool. It comes from being in the present moment, going on a shopping trip with my grandma. Do you know what I mean? It's like doing things that are worthy of happiness rather than hunting for it, like with that starvation, scarcity mindset. Good point, Jake.
It's really like a great kind of philosophy for life, because I mean, you can take a pill. That's literally you like waking up and wanting happiness, but then I drop and it's just not the right way to think about it. But then the kind of bigger question on top of this, and I'm surprised we've gone like this far into our podcast without even talking about this. If this is true that you kind of attract everything, right? What do you think karma is real?
Is karma real? That's a complicated question, because it depends. It depends what we're talking about. If you're talking about a metaphysical force, like some angel with a notepad that writes down all the good and bad things you do and then calculates in some way what the consequences are in the events that happen to you, so how much good or bad luck you have based on the things you do, I don't think the angel with the notebook is necessarily there. But is karma real in the sense that believing karma exists improves your life? Yes. It's similar again to my sort of thought process around the idea of, is God real? Does God exist? Like, well, objectively, no. But living as if God does exist is good. Same thing with karma. Does karma exist? Again, I don't think that angel with the notepad writing down the things you do exists. But what I do think exists is, if you do good things, you make people feel good. If you make people feel good, then people have a good reputation for you. Other people are going to talk about you fondly to people. They're going to have this good energy around you. And they might return the favor 10 years later or 1 year later or next week and do something nice for you. Does being a good person reduce the probability that you get hit by lightning? Probably not. But does it increase the probability that when you go and meet an old friend, they're going to welcome you with a smile and a hug and a warm embrace? Probably. So, yeah, doing good things does increase the probability that good things will happen back to you, because that's just how people work. Reputation and impressions are a big thing. But it's not like like I say, like some angel recording what you do.
I will say about the lightning as it is I would say when you put something out into the universe, there's some sort of sense that like the universe communicates back.
Yeah, but let's deconstruct that, because when you say that, what do you mean by the universe? Because everything is in the universe. So if you do a good thing and someone says thank you, that's the universe replying to you. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And what we've been saying recently about like how this is like a sign from the universe that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just some waffly spiritual message that I put to you on WhatsApp. But no, let's talk about this in terms of, okay, we got that email from some guy that listens to the podcast about how much he enjoys certain episodes and stuff. That, I said, was a kind message from the universe. So that's the same thing as saying something in the universe gave us a good sign, being the person that wrote the email, right? But is that karma yet? We've had conversations, we've recorded them, we've posted them online to a couple of people that like listening to it, and someone's got some value from it. If that's karma in that cycle of doing good and receiving good, 100%, yeah, it's real, it's great.
I don't know on that quote though, why he compares it necessarily to women. I didn't work that bit out.
Well, no, I can work. What I interpret that as is the classic, like, cliche idea that don't chase women, let them, like, attract them, let them chase you. Do you know what I mean? Like that idea. It was like, there was this viral clip of Morgan Freeman where he talked about it, how he doesn't, you don't chase attention from romantic partners. You attract them through being the person that you are and making them think about you. It's just, if Nietzsche's on those kind of lines, and I get what he's saying.
This fact, right, that the average human says like 1,000 negative things about themselves every day. Like it does make sense kind of in your head, right? And it's mostly about like how you're never enough. But when do you think you are enough?
That's too broad. What do we mean by enough?
Yeah, how perfect you are.
So, rephrasing the question, when am I happy with who I am? In small, transient moments that flutter in for a split second when I do something that's pretty meaningful to me on a deep level. But it only lasts for, it's like a smell. It wafts into my life and I take a deep breath and go, oh, Joe, you're not a piece of shit, for a couple of seconds. And then I sort of fall back down to earth into the normal way of being. I don't think you ever complete yourself, as in the video game of being a person and trying to improve ends. I think maybe as you get older and you fulfill what kind of purpose you believe you have, then those moments of feeling like you're not a piece of shit get longer and more frequent. But yeah, I mean, let's take the Europeans as an example. Having a pretty shit tournament, then doing decently in the final. When that final buzzer went at the end and we'd won, and I contributed to that win, there was a good few minutes where I felt like, Joel, you're doing well. You did good. You did good. So I was enough in that moment. But then a few hours later, you think about the next thing. You think about the YouTube video you need to post. You think about the fact that you haven't achieved the goals you want to achieve in your life, and you can't feel enough in those kind of situations. So, yeah, it's like a smell that just wafts into your life every so often. If you're lucky enough to feel that way from time to time, you know that it's possible. What about you, though?
Kind of. I think there's a sense of you feel like you've done what needs to be done. That's kind of what's enough. Like, but it's something I very, very rarely feel again, because the higher self is just too much. It's like unachievable.
Mm.
And like it is the one. It's like the 1,000 negative thoughts a day. Do we need them? Like, is that normal? Is that healthy?
And these are not simple questions, Jacob.
If we got 1,000 negative thoughts in our head a day, that's gonna make us be a better person, I think.
You think? Elaborate on that. Go on. You go.
If you didn't have the thoughts, then you wouldn't rush to do anything. You'd settle.
Mm-hmm.
And we've always got to be better than the day before.
Do we? Why?
Because if it's not growing, it's dying, and we don't want to die.
Okay. Fair enough. Do we need many, many negative thoughts a day? Do we need anything, Jacob? What do we truly need apart from nutrients and love and connection and water and sleep? I don't know, like, are you the argument that it feels like you're saying is we need to have a certain amount of negative thoughts and feelings to get the energy to sort of change ourselves and improve, and that's important in life. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we need that energy, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that you can be the best version of yourself, or at least aim to be a better version of yourself, without hating yourself? Is that a possible scenario?
I think you can hate like a previous self or where you came from.
Good point. Yes, agreed. You can be motivated by a situation you were in that you're now not in. But what I'm trying to say is, your higher self, or this like future Jacob that you want to be, that guy doesn't have 1,000 negative thoughts about himself a day. So if you have a lot of negative thoughts about yourself in the pursuit of becoming this guy, then you're not really becoming this guy, because he wouldn't have that dark, toxic motivation. I think you could become your ideal self and still have those thoughts. They're a separate thing. They're not just the fuel to the fire. They might give you a bit of energy to sort of prove whatever voice in your head that's negative wrong. But I think you can lead a meaningful, enjoyable life, which is the whole purpose of improving and growing, without such a negative self-talk. It's useful, don't get me wrong, but it's a toxic fuel source.
Yeah, I think it's good at the start, maybe. But there's something like I heard of Hormozy, where like he wanted to make more money than his dad, and then he wanted to make more money than his dad did in like a month, and then he wanted to make more than his dad did in a year. And then like his whole career, and then his whole career times whatever, kept on using that fuel, but apparently it was like unhealthy or something. Chris Winning. So I think it's good at the start to actually like motivate you, and then like you're just so much in the routine that it kind of sorts itself out. Like you don't need that cat anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? It's powerful, yet there's a lot of recoil on using that as a fuel source. And also, let's say you're using negative self-talk as fuel to better yourself, but then after you've, in inverted commas, bettered yourself and you're in a better place in life, if those negative thoughts are still there, then what was the point in doing it all anyway? Do you mean, why just be a slave to negative thoughts in your head? Surely we're on a more meaningful path than that in life.
And it might be normal.
I don't care if it's normal though. It wants to be fucking normal. Bro, the ideal is to live a sick life with pretty close to zero negative thoughts. So that's not realistic, but
I think it's maybe. I mean, you got to think about what's the solution. I think it's proof, and it might be gratitude as well. So,
solution to what?
the solution to not having the negative thoughts.
About yourself, that negative self-talk. Yeah, gratitude, doing stuff that makes you feel good about yourself.
And I think I've got so I don't know which direction to go in now. There's two bits that okay. So I'll finish this point. So Nisha says something about self-harm, which is kind of like the like far end of this negative thoughts. And it was, I thought of this because I was in Costa, and I there's like a lot of teenagers that have like self-harm marks, and it's pretty dark. And I saw two of them come in. But he basically says like everyone has a will to power, or in their sort of psychology. So what these people are doing is they lack power, so they need to have the will to power over themselves.
I think we should first recognize that this is a very sort of touchy subject that we're in no way specialized to talk about, but it's also a very interesting point. And I can see the logic behind it. And yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you hate your reality and yourself so much that you feel powerless, which is a common occurrence of people that are in deep, dark times in their life, then harming yourself is a way to at least give you some power, make yourself feel something. Yeah, dark, but could be true, mate.
And on to the point of gratitude, I think it's like quite wishy-washy sort of. You need to be grateful. So I thought we would discuss this a little bit of actually like how do you be grateful? And the first thing that came into my head was the J. Cole song "Love Yours," which I think is a really nice idea. It's like there's always going to be something better, but that's kind of the desire. So really, gratitude could be linked to like killing your desires, because it's like the thing of there's always going to be a better girl, there's always going to be a better house, stuff like that. So that's the first point, I think.
But why don't we cut to the chase? How do you be grateful, you personally?
Just like momentarily things that I enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that does the job?
Temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the negative force is still there. I guess it can be an approach as well. Like, you wake up and your approach to life is you're gonna see the good or something.
Hmm. I think that's very hard to just make yourself do, though.
Yeah. Well, it depends if you're an optimist or not. Um,
I don't think you can force yourself to be optimistic.
yeah. Or maybe like kind of imaginative is like you've got this mundane and you've kind of got to see the extraordinary in it.
Yeah,
Something interesting.
there's always, it's always, yeah. I mean, it's cliche, but there is always something to be grateful for in each situation, for sure. Um, Actually, I've been brainstorming a bit about this for a future video. There's this quote that Cal Newport writes in Deep Work. There's some other person, so I think might be some medieval saying from some industry. I can't quite remember now, but the quote goes, um, "When cutting mere stones, one must always envision cathedrals," or something like that, along those lines, anyway. And what that tells me is when you do things that are mundane, trivial, like cutting stones, you should always be envisioning the larger scale, maybe sacred, meaningful connotations of what you're doing and consequences. So maybe you can be drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, quite a mundane thing that many of us do, that you could do very mindlessly, thinking about the thing you need to do that day and just sort of being somewhere else psychologically. Or you can drink that cup of coffee and think about how grateful you are that it's helping you wake up to embrace the day and how it allows you to do what you want to do and gives you that energy, and how there are some people in the world that don't have access to those kind of things.
There's this nice young quote, which is basically it says, "If the tree goes up to heaven, the roots go down to hell." So this is kind of like to add to our overall sort of conversation. And what I sort of take from that is you need to get down to the bottom to get to at the top. And therefore you need those 1,000 negative thoughts to actually get you to act to do something. But the tree, I don't know, the symbolism of the tree is interesting. I don't think I've worked that quite out yet. But yeah, have you heard that one before?
I have. My interpretation is to be a good person, you have to understand your capacity to be a horrific person. So if you want to be a tree tall enough to reach heaven, your roots have to go down to hell. Like, you can only be truly good if you're choosing to be good rather than bad. If you haven't truly recognized and accepted your capacity to be evil, then you can't truly be good because you're just being good by default. There isn't that moral choice. Does that make sense?
There's no good without evil.
Yeah, but do you get the point that if you're not aware of how bad you can be, you can't be truly good because you're not making a choice to be good? For example, cats can't be evil. They might murder a mouse, but they don't know that they're doing something that we as humans could potentially see as immoral. We know that if things went really bad, we could kill someone. Like, I know if I got angry enough and my life was dark enough and I'd been twisted and radicalized in the wrong ways and I'd accepted the wrong ideologies, I could murder somebody. And the fact that I know that, but I don't, and I try and be a good person in the world, means I've made a moral choice. You know what I mean? You have to have your roots in hell in order to grow into heaven.
Yeah, that's interesting. You took that as more of a moral quote. Um, I guess yeah, you do need to know the extremes. It's kind of like Carl Jung's shadow, which is the worst version of yourself that you know you can be.
Mm.
Uh, um, On people thinking that we're kind of weird, um, how weird should you be?
As weird as you need to be to live a meaningful life.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, weirdness is just kind of like being different from normal, and that.
But, bruv, I don't view it that way. I view it as I'm just living my life. And if people want to perceive that as weird, that's a them problem.
Right.
I'm just alive. I'm just doing what I want to do. You know, if that's weird to you, that's great. That's your perception, bro. You know, my perception is that you're a bit of a weasel, probably. But that's fine. We can still shake hands and have a jolly day.
What's the right amount of pleasure?
Mm.
I'll back this up with some stuff that I read. So Schopenhauer said you should live basically a monkish lifestyle and kill your desires, whereas Nietzsche said you should sort of acknowledge it, recognize it, and obey its voice.
So ask me your first question again.
How much pleasure is the right amount?
Enough that makes you feel alive, but not too much where it starts to own you. Like you have to step into it voluntarily. So there's a difference between eating a slice of cake on your mum's birthday and eating an entire cake at 4 a.m. when you walk to the fridge because you're feeling bad about yourself and your life. Two different scenarios. There's a complete difference between watching a binging a TV series when you've planned it for months and you're with a friend and you're putting an all-nighter watching a series of your favorite show. That's different to when you want to work on something but Netflix appears on your screen as if by magic and suddenly you're watching something. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, that's
the right amount of pleasure is one you stepped into voluntarily.
Yeah, control the pleasure, don't let it control you, because otherwise you become the pleasure.
That's it. Because it's another amazing thing about being a human is that we have access to things like chocolate and Rick and Morty. Do you know what I mean? Two of things that I greatly enjoy. But if I only watched Rick and Morty and ate chocolate, probably wouldn't be very happy.
Yeah. Any last I just got a couple last points that don't really go anywhere. There's a study that if you share your goals with someone, you're more likely to achieve them. Is that just because of like this seems like something you know something about? Like, is it because of accountability?
Well, I've actually heard the opposite of that. Like, I've heard that speaking about your goals and actually doing the work to achieve them makes you feel the same way. So always speaking about your goals reduces the probability that you're going to go and achieve them, because when I speak to you about my ambitions, it makes me feel like I'm moving toward them, which is a great feeling. That's why I feel expansive and energetic after we have a conversation. But if I only relied on that and didn't actually do the work, then the thing wouldn't happen. I think telling the right people about your goals is probably more, going to make you more likely to achieve them. But just talking about them is the opposite. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be careful. There's some fine lines there. But there's definitely accountability. I mean, I guess with a friendship like mine and yours, if one of us looks like they're seriously falling off the wagon, I'd like to think the other one would pull them up on it.
Yeah.
And ask them the right questions. So it depends, isn't it? If you're just showing off about the things you're gonna do with people that aren't really part of your inner circle, then that I don't respect. But I can see both sides.
I think there's too much value on the tongue in this society and not enough value on action.
Very true. Very true.
Louder than words.
It does. That's nice. Facts.
Um, a good fact that I learned recently. Um, the more people there is, the less value each person has. Um, so that's why I think people in the cities are perceived as less friendly.
That's a load of bollocks.
Really? No, 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 no. Because when you're in the countryside,
Jake,
people,
Jake.
people get it past it.
Yeah, but the first thing you said was the more people there are, the less value they are each person is. What do you mean by that?
So if you're okay, if you're
You know what I mean? Like,
if you're in a group but of like one person, a 1-on-1 versus a 1-on-10. The 1-on-1 you're going to give all your attention to.
yeah,
Um, when you've got 10 people in a room, you're not going to even speak to a couple of them.
okay, I agree with that. That's not the same sentence as you said. Where you're like, the more people there are, the less valuable people are.
It's perceived value, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but you've got to think of it in like a social like context, bro. You know what I mean? I'm thinking you're saying the more people are born into the world, the less value people are.
Well, the thing it came into my head is like you go to the countryside, and because you haven't seen someone for ages, you walk past someone, you actually say hello.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. But we've got to ground it in that context. So what you're saying is, the more people you could interact, the more people you can and do interact with, then the less each individual interaction and person becomes
Yeah.
in terms of how much social stimulation you get from them. Yeah. Okay. That I can agree with. Yeah, and it's true. I mean, in cities we're sort of funneled in like sardines into small apartments and trains, and yeah, it's a weird one. It's one of those that when I move to London, I'm going to try and break down that stereotype. We're going to try and have conversations on the train. We'll see how that goes. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, like you got to question how big you want your group to be. Get around to everyone.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So yeah, that's all my points. I feel like it. I don't know if you got anything else, but yeah. Apart from that, like mess up. I think that was a good episode.
Yeah, I agree. Especially some of those bits early on. Your bit about attracting happiness, not chasing it. I'm going to think about that for a while.
Thank you everyone for listening.